This is Algebra 1, Lesson 7a, the opposite of a number. We know that -2 and 2 are opposites. We've talked about that in another video. They are on opposite sides of 0, or what we call the origin, and they are both the same distance away on either side. So 2 is 2 in the positive direction, and -2 is 2 in the negative direction. Both are 2 away from 0. So we call them opposites. Now, you can think of -2, and when we see this symbol, we either say subtract, minus, negative, or today we're going to learn of a new way of thinking about it. You can think of it as opposite. And this way of thinking about it is really helpful for some issues, some things that come up, and some problems that we're going to be doing. Let's locate this. How would we read that? What does that mean? It's like -2 or minus a -2. Let's think of it as the opposite of the opposite of 2. Think of this as opposite of the opposite of 2. All right, let's take each of those separately here. All right, let's start out with the opposite of 2, okay? Here's 2, and its opposite would be over here. So the opposite of 2 would just be -2. That's one way to think about it. Well, now let's take the opposite of that. Well, the opposite of that would be back over here. So the opposite of the opposite of 2 is equal to +2. Let's look at another one. Here we have the opposite of 2, which is -2. And then we're going to take the opposite of that, which would be +2. And then we're going to take the opposite of that, which would be -2. So the opposite of the opposite of the opposite of 2 is -2. We could keep going on, right? Here's another way to think about it. We know that when you have these two negatives here, you're taking the opposite of a negative, it becomes a positive. And then we have this negative left, -2. So you can go back and forth, but it's really helpful to be able to think about this symbol as the opposite and use it that way. In the next video, we'll talk about problems where it's helpful to use that way of thinking.